The Rays are getting the opportunity to be reborn.
I think most Rays fans are appreciative. The Montreal split city plan was like the beginning of the end of this area.
I think it was a little bit of both is the reason of why he bowed out. What do you think was the tipping point?
It was not in their game plan to sell the team now. Like, I think that he saw the writing was on the wall and he said, you know what, let's just make this a clean break.
He could have sold this team to anyone, anywhere, and you know what? Evan probably got that approved just like that.
You know, with the John Fisher situation, it was so much worse. And Oakland and Tampa Bay are so different in their scenarios.
Yes.
Stu didn't do that. He did not let the baseball operations, the baseball product ever suffer in this process. And for that, I applaud him.
You're not starting construction with a new stadium and a new ownership group tomorrow, so let's call it 5 years at Tropicana Field. Take your time, slow things down, let a new group come in, don't try and rush anything.
They're going to try to build in Tampa, and if for some reason Tampa does not work out, then we get to talk about Orlando.
Evan, there's so many different ways I think I could start this conversation, but what I really want to get from me to you is like a congratulations, not just to you, but everybody who's a fan of Tampa baseball, because the Rays are getting the opportunity to be reborn. It literally is like that, right?
Yeah, new ownership group will be officially put in place here imminently. Just have to dot the final I, cross the final T. But it's been a long journey. It's been interesting to watch Stu Sternberg kind of have his swan song, especially with everybody in the organization who loves him. And he was ball boy for a day. He had his farewell also during the last home series here at Sternberg Field. And but it was a necessary change. And the fact that the area can finally have potentially the stadium saga over with would be essential, amazing, and it would be quite the accomplishment for this new ownership group to pull off immediately. That lets us know this team is going to be here to stay, and we can cross this bridge another 30, 40 years from now, but it would be like the first time in franchise history that the fan base can go to games knowing that their team might not be ripped from them in the future.
It's almost like the fan base can actually go to sleep at night too, right? Not have to worry about what comes tomorrow, what twists and turns. And, I watched your coverage throughout all this, and I saw a lot of fans be very hard on Stu Sternberg. And why not? I mean, there were stadium deals that he backed out of. There were a lot of questionable decisions by the Rays. It's amazing how the fan base and watching how they reacted to him saying goodbye basically last weekend for the final home series, how the fan base went from frustration to almost gratification, appreciation for Stu Sternberg. That was an amazing twist. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, and because there's such a dichotomy here with Stu that on the field, I think most Rays fans are appreciative. And that's not to say that, you got to factor in Stu training away all their favorite players and the fact that they don't have a high payroll. And, we can get into some of that gobbledygook of Moneyball playing with less. But in the end, from what Stu Sternberg did with this franchise, going back to the Vince Namoli days, where the Devil Rays were just an embarrassment. And I think, sports leagues now have learned from that process of just throwing an expansion team just to the wolves and saying, hey, you got to rebuild yourself from start versus, something in the NHL where they say, hey, we have to create fandom in the first 5 years. So we got to give you a good team that attaches, yourself to the community. The Devil Rays never had that. Tampa Bay never had that. Stu Sternberg came in, flipped that thing around, rebranded, and boom, they were in the World Series. So if we can teleport to 2008, the reviews on Stu Sternberg are through the roof. It's just over time, what he did outside the realm of baseball, it weighed so heavily on this community, and his actions and his words never met. And it's always funny to me because you hear so often from the fan base that Stu Sternberg was like the worst owner ever. And it's like, man, it could have been so much worse. I think that just tells me, and it tells everybody just how disconnected he was with the fan base and how frustrated the fan base got with him because, he constantly was at odds of keeping this team here in a sense. Like, I mean, he never actually left. He never pulled the trigger on any of this stuff. But I think the Montreal split city plan was like the beginning of the end of this area really having any patience for him. I think
Right.
that really ticked a lot of people off.
You mentioned it could have been worse. Trust me, Evan, I know. It could be
Mhm.
so much worse for
Exactly.
fans in Tampa.
Yes.
So I actually think this is not so black and white. People will ask, did he lose interest and sell the team? Did he get forced out by Major League Baseball and sell the team? I'm here to say it doesn't always have to be one or the other. Just like instinct wise, I think it was a combination of both. I think he felt a little bit of heat. I think he had a little bit of reservation personally about where's this going for me? Is this worth it? I love it, but I've been doing it for 20 plus years. I think it was a little bit of both is the reason of why he bowed out. What do you think was the tipping point?
Yeah, I think some of that. I do believe that it was never their intention to really sell the Rays. They did want to hold, eventually they did, but for now, I think they still wanted to win a World Series. They still
Right.
wanted to be owners of a franchise. They were not. It was not in their game plan to sell the team now. But having said that, when they felt the heat, as you mentioned, when they realized a lot of their words weren't working the same way that it once was, when they realized that Major League Baseball was pissed off, when they realized that Major League Baseball was going to do some things that was going to mess with them, their revenue, what could potentially come down the chute. And I think Stu, he's not someone that's gonna like fight. Like I think that he saw the writing was on the wall and he said, you know what, let's just make this a clean break.
Right.
I got it. I hear you. The Major League Baseball did really well by him, got him $1.7 billion on a team that was valued, at like 1.25 or something like that. I mean, it was they got a pretty penny on this franchise, so it's nothing to cry about for Stu losing his team, and
Right.
he's going to
Right.
have quite the compensation on the way out.
Right.
But yeah, I think that it ultimately he never, what we really don't know is was he always positioning this team to move out of the area, or was he always just doing this song and dance
Right.
to really stay in the trop as long as he could,
Right.
where he wasn't losing any money? I mean, it was barely a cost for him in the trop. So that remains to be seen, and I think all the skeptics out there will say he just wanted to position himself to leave. Certainly understand that. But yeah, I think in the end it just became too much of a fight, and I think from that standpoint, Stu said, "I'm good. I get it. Let's just move on here."
You did a great monologue to sum up the entire situation, how fans feel, how they've felt, how they feel now, and what the Rays have done, haven't done. I thought that was brilliantly put. At one point,
Thank
though,
you.
you also compare it to the A's situation with owner John Fisher, but you said Stu Sternberg isn't, and I think your words were, a villain like
Mhm.
John Fisher. I'm going to say that the biggest credit I can give Stu Sternberg is that when he had the choice of selling the team, he also had the choice of selling it to anybody anywhere. And I do realize that Dr. Rick Workman has pivoted from trying to be the main backbone of the Orlando Dreamers to now part of the Zalewski group that's going to keep it in Tampa, we think. But Stuart Sternberg actually did right by fans in Tampa because he sold the team to a group that, from what we understand, wants to do everything right here in Tampa. He could have sold this team to anyone, anywhere. And you know what? Evan probably got that approved just like that. So I think
Yeah,
that's a big thing for him.
and that was, because, and again, like, and with TV and having to work and time, like, I mean, I put 4 minutes into that thing. I wish I could have gone 8. I wish I could have gone 12. And then you can really dig into the nuances of kind
Right.
of all these things.
Right.
But that's why going back, I kind of said that because there are people out there who say he's the worst owner of all time, and you guys understand it's so much worse. And that's the thing. Like Stu, ultimately, people can talk about what he was going to do and this and that. That's all hypothetical land. In the end, what happened? The team was sold to a group that is going to try its hardest
Right.
to get a stadium here. We are optimistic that is going to happen.
Right.
He did not have to do that. Major League Baseball certainly had their preference on the Tampa Bay area, and I'm sure shoved them into a corner with that into some regards. But in the past, he could have also, left and sold it to another group, and I'm sure Major League Baseball wouldn't have, batted an eyelash, and maybe would have circled back to Tampa Bay with a stadium plan and figured out something there. The fact is, with the John Fisher situation, it was so much worse. And Oakland and Tampa Bay are so different in their scenarios.
Yes.
But uh, timeline wise, for Major League Baseball, they ran parallel in the sense of that Major League Baseball didn't want to start an expansion until they figured out the athletic situation, they figured out the Rays situation. So you saw what happened with the A's and you saw what happened with the Rays, and it just was different. It was a different result. And even before you had the final nail in the coffin there in Oakland, you know, John Fisher removed a tremendous team from on the field and said, screw this. Screw this. I'm going to make all you fans suffer. I'm going to make you not want to show up to the park because that's only going to give me more reason to sell this damn team and take you out of your town. Stu didn't do that. He did not let the baseball operations, the baseball product ever suffer in this process. And for that,
Yep.
I applaud him, even though I don't think a lot of the fan base here will. But that's just, I mean, that in that perspective, I just like it's hard for me to say that this guy's a villain when in the end, people here, hopefully, if the stadium thing works out, they're going to get what they want. It's not going to be with Sternberg, but they're going to get what they want. Go talk to fans in Oakland. Did they get what they want? They didn't. And it's so much worse and it's so sad. So and that is the worst case scenario. So that was really my biggest emphasis in that line, is just a reminder to like Stu never threw the fireball that he could have.
Right.
He had it in his back pocket, and I mean everyone kind of even like going back to the Montreal City plan, like there were things that I always heard with Stu. It's like if Stu wants to get this done, he really has to be the bad guy. And Stu doesn't want to be that guy. And he was a bad guy for different ways, but he never wanted to blowtorch the area. And that needs to be put into perspective.
To steal your analogy, Stu did break some windows, but John Fisher burnt the house down, right? Like that's exactly how it went.
Yep.
I want to pivot a little bit and talk about Tropicana Field because that's been another saga as part of all this. And it was caused by Mother Nature and put the Rays in the temporary stadium spot for this year. Now it's getting fixed. 55, closer to now $60 million. I've seen the roof panels go up. So this is my observation, Evan, from a couple thousand miles away. But that's why I want to ask you about it, because your boots on the ground there. In my opinion, fixing it up for 3 years and $60 million, no, that's not financially worth it. But it is worth it to keep the team around. And you know what? At this point, you're not starting construction with a new stadium and a new ownership group tomorrow. So let's call it 5 years at Tropicana Field. Take your time, like slow things down, let a new group come in. Don't try and rush anything. Use Tropicana Field as insurance. And you know what? It is costly, but this is going to save your team and profit from that for decades to come. That's how I feel.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to. There's also some legal things in there where the city is responsible, and they tried to think of a deal to not go down this path. Nothing came to fruition. Major League Baseball stepped in and said, we're going to have to get this done. So, once the dust is settled, once the insurance payments are put out, we don't really know what the cost of this all is going to be. We certainly see that rising, and we kind of always knew that it was going to rise from the initial projections. But I agree. I understand the lease is up at a certain time. I would imagine that St. Pete, they're going to want to extend the life of that building as much as they can, considering what they put into it to make it worth their while. They also, they'll be able to figure out what they want to do in the downtown area while the Rays eventually shift out of that ballpark. And then I just think that it made the most sense to fix that place. Like, if you didn't, where are the Rays going? And people always say, like, just stay at Steinbrenner. And I always tell people, like, if the Steinbrenner is not their home.
Right.
That is the Yankees facility.
Right.
And the Yankees gave it to them for a year. And we're all thankful for it. It was a fun year at Steinbrenner. But the Yankees want their facility back. It's not ours to take for 5 years. So it will, I would be shocked if it's just a 3-year deal and we're shifting in. I think things on the stadium front will likely move a bit fast now. Once that thing is completed, conversations are going to happen now. Instead of in hypothetical land, it will happen in reality. I think all these what if scenarios are going to turn into let's make this happen. And they can probably build a stadium fairly quickly. I don't know if they can develop the area around it as quickly as they would want, but they at least do have a workable facility across the bridge that if they need to extend it by a couple of years, as you mentioned, like why not? I
Yeah.
think fans will be understanding of that. If there's a stadium being built,
Yep.
I think you'll start seeing more, okay, I'm willing to do this because I know what's coming down the chute.
St. Pete is probably going to be in some conversations here, but this baseball team is going to Tampa, right? There's no question about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure St. Pete's open to having the
Right.
conversations. I guess there's a world where if Tampa's playing hardball,
Yeah.
that they would circle back to St. Pete and say, "Hey, that deal that you gave Stu, is that still on the table?" But for the most part, my read on this is it's Tampa or bust.
Hmm.
This they're going to try to build in Tampa, and if for some reason Tampa does not work out, then we get to talk about Orlando. I think from the start, I mentioned it to you, Orlando for me has always been the plan B. It's always been a legitimate plan B, but it's always been a, hey, we got to create a scenario where if we cannot get this thing done in Tampa, we got to pivot. We don't want to pivot, but we got to have that okay, let's turn to this. And now we have someone in the ownership group who has connections to Orlando where, hey, we want you a part of this ownership group. We like you. Let's have you here. But if things don't work out, we're gonna now, shift some things over to, to you and what kind of you saw, and that will work over there as well. So to me, that's kind of how I see it. I do see it as Tampa, and if we're still spinning our wheels and we can't blame Stu anymore, then Orlando will be a legitimate contender in this.
Switching to baseball, over all the years with Stu Sternberg at the helm as owner, like the Rays had some winning seasons. They made some magical runs. I've always said that you can win without spending, but you can't extend that window of winning unless you put some money back into it, keep your players, re-sign them, all the above. What do you think the future holds for this actual baseball team on the field with new ownership? There is certain to be some change in the front office and maybe some people leave and go and do different things. Can the Rays actually still be that underdog team, or what will the payroll look like? I mean, I know there's a lot of
Mhm.
questions to be answered about how this new ownership is going to treat its baseball team, but what do you expect the actual baseball product to be going through this transition? We almost don't even talk about that part.
I expect the baseball to remain fairly similar as long as most of the baseball ops people are still there. I
Yeah.
mean, for Eric Neander, right, we were all wondering, hey, are you going to take that Washington Nationals job? Well, the Nationals job is now taken up. Like, Neander doesn't have really anywhere to go unless he wants to retire. He's very young, very good at his job. I don't see why he would want to do that. The new ownership group wants him. So if Neander's at the helm and Kevin Cash is still on board and you're able to keep the people in between, well, for the most part, the thinking is going to stay the same.
Yeah.
Operationally, they're going to stay the same. I assume that the salary, the payroll, the opening day payroll is going to stay the same. I don't see them all of a sudden being $150 million spenders. What I hope happens, what I don't know will happen, but what I hope happens is that the new ownership group comes in this offseason, in a month from now, we got a press conference to go to extending Junior Caminero, telling the fan base, hey, we are going to develop great talent, and when they're great, we're going to keep them here, right? That's how you win the fan base immediately coming off the Stu Sternberg experience versus all the fans in my mentions that go, well, I guess we only got 3 more years to enjoy Caminero. Oh, we get, 3 more years to enjoy Chandler Simpson. Like, you got to start. You don't have to invest in the free agents. You got to invest in your own people, the people that the fan base is falling in love with. And that's what I hope, what I think will be changed with this new ownership group. Not this crazy amount of cash that's being dropped. It's just I think they're going to have a different philosophy on the, hey, we got to shuffle everybody in and out sort
Yeah.
of deal. And that will give Eric Neander a little bit of a better, a little bit of an easier job, that he doesn't always have to play the trade this person, trade that person every single year and have a new team out there and so on and so forth. So, typically stuff like this, you don't really feel the wake of it until like years from now.
Right.
So it's going to be
Right.
like, probably it's going to be same as you remember. And then 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to start feeling the effects of, okay, now what
Right.
has this ownership group done?
Right.
What are we seeing coming through the pipeline? How is this team performing? What have these new actions internally done? That's when we'll start feeling it.
Takes a while to put your stamp on something, that's for sure.
Hmm.
I've got two more things. What is the temperature of the fan base in a sense of, yes, some excitement for the rebirth, maybe some residual feelings of like how things have been the last 10, 15, 20 years of uncertainty and frustration and wanting the owner to sell. Now he did. Is the fan base confident? Are they nervous? Are they apprehensive? Are they flat out just excited and nothing else? How do they feel about just the overall direction and future? And there's a lot on the table here of how things might go.
Yeah, I think overall the fan base is excited, and yet there's a chunk of that fan base who loved Stu Sternberg, who thinks this is a bad move, that the team's going to suffer, that you don't know what you lost, and I want to recognize those people as well. But overall, the majority of people are excited
Yeah.
to move on. It's time. It
Yeah.
just you. It, people who are big fans of Stu only look at this team from an on the field perspective, and this is a business, and he did not connect with the community well enough. And that, it really is not opinion. It is complete fact. If you go out there and talk to 100 people, they'll the majority of them are going to have a pretty sour taste of Stu in their mouth, whether you're a big fan of him or not. So I think the fan base is really excited for change. They're really excited for the prospect of having the stadium saga finally over.
Right.
That's what they're most excited for. I think everyone is still waiting for a shovel in the ground to really believe it. But overall, I think that it is viewed a little bit as a new era, and hopefully like this new start of finally, like, kind of the kids go off to college. It's like, okay, like you lived in this world for 18 years of your life, and you've been built up, and you've gone through all your trials and tribulations, and now you get to go on your own, and hopefully this is going to be sort of that new chapter that says we can still win without Stu and also have our stadium. So I think there's a lot of optimism right now, more than anything that we can worry about on the field, and it's just a matter of this new ownership group now capturing that optimism and making sure that they own the moment, because as you know, these moments can also be very fleeting. You can win immediately right now. And Stu had this where he took over, he won immediately, and then fizzled out over time.
Right,
So
right.
it's going to come down to, typically at the start, you want to do things that are going to grab people. And so that's why I look to Caminero. That's why I look towards some of those actions. The new stadiums being built, you certainly want to drum up excitement for that. That's why I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of a push to start.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, when the dust settles,
Right.
what's it all going to look like, right? We don't want this to be a Miami Marlins situation where they put all this money into the team, got the stadium, and said, see you later.
Right.
Now we're going to run bare bones, have fun, guys. And they still haven't been, they've barely been to the playoffs since then, since the whole Luria thing. So that's ultimately optimism, though.
It's like the cannonball into the pool. You got to make an entrance, right? Right off the
Yeah.
diving board. Welcome to the pool, everybody.
Exactly.
So the last thing is this. Now that the Rays are seemingly settled, let's assume that they're going back to Tropicana Field for the final 3 years of the lease, maybe a little bit more, but that they'll build a new stadium. They will stay in Tampa for as long as you and I will be alive. There are still all those other cities out there, Orlando included. Nashville is very much in the conversation for a while. Out west here, we've got Utah with Salt Lake City and Portland all trying to get teams. In your mind, where are the next major league cities, and how do those cities get a team? Like, if the Rays are staying, and if ultimately the A's are going to Las Vegas, how do those cities get into the MLB conversation, and which cities would those be?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Nashville has been like there in the background forever. Like, I would be surprised if Nashville wasn't one of the teams. It seems like that's all but like a done situation in the background. They've just been waiting for this whole situation to figure itself out. But I would be very surprised if Nashville wasn't one team. And I'm not sleeping on Salt Lake City, because
Me neither.
that ownership group, what they're able to do, you're seeing it right now with kind of the Mammoth and what they just built there and the investments they've made there. I think that would be a very intriguing city to look at.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people probably on the outside are like, Salt Lake City, but do not sleep on them.
Yeah.
I think that is a legitimate group with a lot of money. Certainly something that's going to make owners happy. Someone who's going to be able to go right in there and be a positive influence in baseball. Other than that, yeah, I mean, you've heard the Portlands of the world, you heard Orlando.
Right.
I just
Is
think
Orlando done, by the way? I mean, I know the Dreamers have
I,
kind of dissolved, but is the idea of did the idea of Orlando ever make sense being 90 miles away from Tampa?
yeah, I mean, I get Orlando as a backup option to the Rays because I don't see how you're going to have the Marlin. I know they want, and again, they're going to do the regional realignments.
Right, right.
So when you look at the regional realignments, you have Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
you have Tampa Bay, you have Miami, and then probably like Nashville's going to be that other team in that group. And like I understand that you can really consolidate that with Orlando, but I don't know how. I mean, Orlando's a great market. Don't get me wrong. It's just having a team in Tampa Bay and Orlando seems a little bit like overkill.
Yeah.
And Miami, just it seems a little bit too much. So that's why there are certain teams out there where I think there are Group A's and there are Group B's, and that's why Major League Baseball. It's not easy for them to find billionaire owners who can take over a team. Things happen in this process all the time, and when the go button is hit, they got to hit go, and if things happen, they got to have leverage. So that's why you hear multiple groups. That's why you hear people vying for jockeying for position. But ultimately, I do not see Orlando happening without the Rays not getting a stadium here.
Right. Right.
Viable market, but they need the Rays to blow up on the stadium side of things for them to have any shot in my eyes.
Evan, you do such a great job. Obviously, we've crossed paths during this Rays situation. I'm glad that we did. I admire your work from afar, from one veteran to another. Keep it up, man. Keep doing the good work, and I'll stay in touch with you, buddy. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.